The socialist establishment in Britain faces yet another huge defeat as Robert Jenrick remains the last Tory standing after years of failed policies implemented by both Labour and the Tories. And in this live stream, we're going to get your perspective and your views on the two-tier system. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2C TV, your global news channel. I'm Maya Tusi, and this is your latest news update from the United Kingdom, or a massively divided kingdom at this point. 14 years of the Tory government, successive governments, failed policies, poor governance and betrayal of the British public trust. That's one thing that we still have to live under. Before that, we had Tony Blair and his cronies making the initial damage, which we're going to get to it because it's relevant to what we're talking about here. And within less than a year, the Labour government under Keir Starmer have somehow managed successfully to do more damage than even 14 years of terrible Tory policies. So we're going to give you guys the latest update because some tiny victory, actually, it's a big victory for Robert Jenrick. In this case, obviously the same Robert Jenrick who also resigned from the Tory government because of failed policies. He was the one who actually highlighted this issue first a few months ago. Nobody in Parliament actually knew what was going on because things come in all the time. Regulations, laws, guidelines and proposals. MPs need to be on top of this. And there's only a handful of MPs who are actually on top of everything that's happening in the House of Commons and outside, including people like Rupert Lowe, who's very active in Parliament, people like Robert Jenrick, and a couple of others. Robert Jenrick was the one who actually mentioned this. Not only mentioned because the media wasn't reporting, nobody knew what was going on. He then started the fight because the rest of the Tory shadow cabinet, I don't know what they were doing. Right now, the Tory party, after 14 years of just completely ruining everything, they are currently all over the place. You can't even trust them right now to even run a clown show, a basic tiny circus. Now, having said that, Robert Jenrick started the fight. He didn't just mention the issue. He actually kept fighting and fighting. We heard some stuff from other parties, but nothing really. I mean, Kemi Badenoch herself didn't do much. He managed to put so much pressure that the Sentencing Council had to make a U-turn. Even Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, were forced to say, okay guys, we're going to talk to the Sentencing Council, who were basically, firstly, the Sentencing Council was set up by the Labour government and Gordon Brown in 2009, implemented on April 2010, just before the Tories got into power. Before that, you had the Sentencing Guidelines Council, which was set up in 2003 by Tony Blair, and it's full of basically socialists. Starmer said, we're going to talk to these guys. They said, no, go away. We don't care about you, even though they're all friends. Robert Jenrick pushed and pushed and pushed. Now we have this.
News just in. The Sentencing Council have just announced that they are suspending their two-tier sentencing guidelines. The guidelines that we revealed and which would have discriminated against men, against white people, against Christians. Now, we launched a legal action against the Sentencing Council, and we gave them until 5 p.m. today to respond, or else we would have gone to the High Court and sought an injunction. Now, we'll never know for certain, but we were told we had a very high chance of success, and the Sentencing Council announced their decision at 5 p.m. today. Thank you to everyone across the country who supported our campaign and who believed like us that equality before the law is a principle that is worth defending. Now, there are still instances of two-tier justice, and so I will keep fighting against them. And we will keep fighting to ensure that we have the rule of law in this country and that everyone is equal before it, regardless of the color of your skin or your faith. That is a battle worth fighting.
That's the thing, by the way. So let's not forget, as a reminder, both successive Tory and Labour governments made a mess. So Labour introduced these policies, right? Labour created the Sentencing Council, proposed in 2009, implemented in 2010. The Tories didn't do much. And at the time, when you had the coalition government, people like George Osborne, David Cameron, absolutely nothing. So they essentially endorsed this. The Tories had 14 years to reverse damaging policies that were implemented by the Labour government in the 2000s. Nothing was done. Now, obviously, we've had people like Robert Jenrick who've been fighting inside government. He had to resign from the Tory government before they left government because he realised, well, these guys are not doing anything. There's no point in even trying to have a conversation with these idiots, including people like Rishi Sunak. Because the problem is also about the state, civil servants. The whole thing has been infiltrated by a bunch of Labour-supporting socialists. Anyway, we had some praise on this. Stephen Wolfe, the former ally to Nigel Farage, not anymore obviously, said that there is no doubt Robert Jenrick led the Sentencing Council campaign from within Parliament, as Rupert Lowe has done on immigration. Both are now the leading voices on this issue and casting shadow on Nigel Farage, who once claimed it as his own. That's the thing. I mean, the reform, forget about Kemi Badenoch, because, we don't know what she's up to. Nigel Farage we did a live report earlier today before this one. He did say a lot of things, even in recent times, last few months. Nothing was actually done. Whether you're talking about the grooming gangs or the Sentencing Council, all this stuff, take action. Just like how Rupert Lowe took, essentially, on a legal level, action on the grooming gangs inquiries. Robert Jenrick taking legal action against the Sentencing Council. This is how you do things. Niak Orbani, Mr. Banana Man, said, imagine if Robert Jenrick had never spoken about this. This victory truly belongs to him and the campaign that, with the support of the people and activists, has stood against two-tier justice. This is a small battle. This is not the war. You haven't finished everything yet. Because, again, let's not forget, there are so many things that this government is already doing, still doing. That's disgusting. There's also the issue of bad policies implemented by the Tories, 14 years. You need to reverse some of that. And fundamental policy changes that happened under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. We still haven't reversed those things. From the Supreme Court to the Sentencing Council, the actual abolishing it, to everything else, ECHR, the so-called Equalities Act. All these things need to be reversed if you want to have a future in this kingdom. Anyway, after this success, Robert Jenrick in the House also stood up against Shabana Mahmood. And this is what you do. If you want to be an effective politician, you must have the right rhetoric. You must be obviously charismatic. You must know how to actually have a public debate. But that's not enough. You also have to be hardworking in terms of the details. Again, we've seen it from people like Rupert Lowe and Jenrick. But you need to also be able to do this, what I'm about to show you. Be able to actually hold them to account on a parliamentary level.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Lord Chancellor must be living in a parallel universe if she's giving herself a pat on the back today. The truth is that she's completely lost control of the justice system. She sat on her hands for weeks. She took 7 days to gather her thoughts and put her views in writing to the Sentencing Council. Her incompetence took this down to the wire. Magistrates and judges were only updated by the press office of the Sentencing Council at midday today that the guidelines they were due to come into force had in effect been suspended. That raises the very real prospect that magistrates and judges sitting from 10 a.m. this morning were unaware of this chaotic last-minute change and did sentence people under guidelines that the Justice Secretary herself has conceded are two-tier. But it gets worse. In that very email to thousands of judges and magistrates sent just 90 minutes ago, the Sentencing Council state, and I quote, "We remain of the view that the guidelines are necessary and appropriate." Confusion reigns. They're being told one thing by the Lord Chancellor and another by the Sentencing Council. Who really is in charge here? Yet again, the Justice Secretary has been humiliated and undermined by activist judges seeking to undermine the will of this place, our Parliament. Her authority has been shredded. She is being treated as a two-tier, second-tier Justice Secretary. Madam Deputy Speaker, this was entirely preventable if the Justice Secretary had simply put party politics to one side and just backed our bill weeks ago to restore accountability and empower her to actually control justice policy. But the Labour Party blocked it. If the Prime Minister has been tricked into sitting at the front of the Docklands Light Railway thinking that he's in charge, as his Chief of Staff mocked him for the other day, the Lord Chancellor has chosen to sit there in the passenger seat, allowing the judiciary to take charge. She's decided to be undecided. She's resolved to be irresolute, all-powerful to be impotent. Even after this complete shambles, she won't even re-establish ministerial oversight. We're told via frantic press briefings that her bill, which we haven't even seen yet, will surgically remove this two-tier sentencing guidelines. But this doesn't tackle the root cause of the problem at all, which is a legal quango that is activist, which holds views completely divergent to the public, to Parliament, and now we're told to the government. Unless she follows the formula of our bill, MPs on this side produced will be back here time and again to unwind the next piece of madness coming out of the Council. Take the Sentencing Council's immigration guidelines that water down sentences for immigration offences below the 12-month threshold for automatic deportation. If published, it will mean hundreds of illegal migrants and foreign national offenders will avoid deportation every single year. It will blow a hole in border security. It even waters down the maximum life sentence for people smugglers legislated for just under a year ago. It completely disregards parliamentary sovereignty. At our last exchange, the Justice Secretary said there would be no two-tier justice on her watch. Well, there it is. And it is worse than that. On the 2nd of January, her own department, not the Sentencing Council, her own department published guidance ordering the prioritisation of bail for ethnic minorities and transgender people, continuing a practice introduced under Gordon Brown. And contrary to the misinformation peddled by her press office, it produced new guidance on pre-sentencing reports that have been forced for months, which state probation officers should consider the culture of an offender and whether they have suffered, and I quote, intergenerational trauma from historical events. Well, this is cultural relativism, which violates the rule of law and puts the British public at risk. And this time...
This is the fascinating part, because, yes, the battle as won, not the war. So, obviously, the Sentencing Council temporarily suspending the actual guidelines, the government delaying it because the government has now been forced to do an emergency push to change the law. So it's not coming back anyway. But the problem is Sentencing Council is still here. The Sentencing Council itself is not going anywhere. But the guidelines themselves, because they had to delay it so that the government could introduce a new legislation to stop it. Now, ideally, Starmer and Mahmoud didn't want to do it, but Robert Jenrick exposed it. They're like, well, we're going to have to do it now. And by the way, it took them weeks, absolutely weeks. They could have done this, well, what was it? I think the beginning of March they could have done this. Because all you had to do, just do an emergency legislation, pass it through the House within a few days before the deadline, which was now, what, last week? When the whole thing was introduced, whenever it was, a few days ago. Yeah, well, I was now, you have the situation now, right? But they have actually had to delay this. This is the embarrassing part of the way the government works. Barry says, Maya, hold up, he's lying. It's not. As earlier in Parliament, Mahmoud said, the Labour minister said, they were delaying it, not suspending it. That's the same thing, by the way. Just a few minutes before this clip you're showing. Okay, no. Firstly, usually don't believe government ministers, but in this case she's right. But usually you don't really say, but government told me that. Delaying and suspending is the same thing. So suspending the actual guidelines now, because it should be implemented now, right? The reality is, Mahmoud and Starmer have now been forced to do an emergency legislation to change it. So they have to delay it in terms of the implementation of it. So suspending it. Suspending is not cancelling. There's a difference. Suspending it is temporary so that they could actually change the legislation. And that's the plan, basically. They have no other option because Starmer has already announced it. He has to do it. There was a legal action as well. John says, from what I have read and seen and read about Robert Jenrick, I don't mind him. I mean, he's a good guy, but he's becoming more charismatic. Robert Jenrick should be the Conservative leader. Shame that the press are censoring the news. Not only that, let's not forget, they also tried their best to call Robert Jenrick a far-right thug. When he was standing against Kemi Badenoch, one of the reasons that they all went against him because they didn't really want him in charge because he was saying controversial things. And they didn't expect Robert Jenrick to say this because for years, obviously under the previous Tory government, he had to keep quiet about his actual views. But for those of us who obviously knew Robert Jenrick from way before, we knew that obviously if you open the door, if Jenrick becomes independent-minded, then wow, it's going to be chaos. And by the way, the controversial things he's been saying is not really that controversial anymore. It's normalized. Talking about mass deportations, talking about multiculturalism not working. These are common sense things. Yes, they were controversial 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but not anymore. The interesting thing about this is that Robert Jenrick is now saying it. Where are the other so-called right-wing politicians? They are still playing it safe. They are still saying, well, we can't really say that. We can't do mass deportations. That's very politically incorrect. It's controversial. It's 2025. A lot of countries are already doing it. Get over it. Don't need new law. Yeah, but we just need to stop making new laws. We have a lot of laws already. It's unconstitutional, so Parliament's law keepers should have stopped this or call for arrests. Well, this escalated. I don't know where that went. But yeah, well, no, Parliament can make any laws they want. That Parliament is sovereign, but they shouldn't. Just because they can doesn't mean they should. Stop making laws. I wish we had government shutdowns like the federal government in the US. Things would be so smooth. But yes, of course, you have to protect the Constitution, which has already been wrecked by people like Blair and Cameron and all the others. Clive says, good point, Tusi. Rupert, Ben Habib, Jenrick, and whoever is standing for change. Where are your detailed plans of all the actions you must take to reset Parliament so there can be a future? But that's the thing. When you look at politicians like obviously Jenrick and Lowe, because they are the actual elected politicians, and Ben Habib is not. But Ben Habib, I know him personally, he's very good at details. So if you basically call Ben Habib a politician, these type of politicians, they are very good at details. You will be surprised that most MPs are not good with details. Either they are lazy or they're stupid. They don't read the brief. They don't even do anything proactive. They're all reactionary. So they just wait for something to come out and then they'll react to it. Whereas Robert Jenrick opened up the whole case. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody knew what was going on. He said, well, we're going to have to go against this because he read the details. Ben Habib did the same thing with the Northern Ireland Protocol as part of the Brexit deal. When people like Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage were going around celebrating that we left the EU, Ben Habib was saying, whoa, we haven't actually, because Northern Ireland is still part of the EU and all these thousands of laws from the EU is still in our statute books. We have to do something about this because he read the details. He knew exactly how to fight it. Ben Habib did the same thing recently with grooming gangs. He actually found a way, because he's been doing his homework. He found a treaty between Pakistan and the UK that would enable us to deport people to Pakistan. The problem with that is that people behind the scenes will not allow it to happen because of certain things going on with the Pakistani government, that they would not want the grooming gangs to go back to Pakistan. And let's just say because of the pressure from the Chinese Communist Party, we have to keep Pakistan happy. That's the reason that the Foreign Office, faceless bureaucrats, are not doing anything about it. They do not want this treaty between Pakistan and Britain to be implemented or triggered. Chris says, top class Jenrick, what a display, ripping the government apart. Who set this woke sentencing council? Oh, of course, Starmer. Starmer didn't set it up. Starmer was, part of it, but that was the Labour government, the Gordon Brown. We have people in the live chat who do not listen, which I don't understand how it could be possible unless you're multitasking. Gary says, it's only suspended, don't you? if you listened carefully, obviously we've already explained all this. That's suspended and delayed because Starmer has now been forced to introduce the fast track legislation to change it. That's the whole point, because you have to suspend it now because you don't have any legal powers to cancel it. So you have to suspend it now until Parliament actually passes the new legislation, and then you can cancel the whole thing. But the problem is the Sentencing Council itself will still exist. This isn't about cancelling the Sentencing Council. This is about cancelling the new guidelines introduced by the Sentencing Council. Now, Angelo Hero says, I like Robert Jenrick, more believable than Farage. The Viking says, subscribe to 2CTV Plus to see the new documentary. Thank you, Viking, for the reminder. Of course, yes, we have Groomed, the latest documentary, which was presented and produced by the brilliant Sammy Woodhouse. You can watch that by going on 2c.tv. The link is also in the description. You get access to all the premium content, documentaries, interviews, and the chat forum. But actually, as of this coming Sunday, we're also going to be publishing the new documentary called Cancelled. Do we have the promo? Should we put it on? What's going on? Oh yeah, there we go. Of course we have it. I'm doing so well. Let me show you a few seconds teaser of our upcoming documentary called Cancelled.
Free speech is one of the main cornerstones of Western civilization.
When I was at school, when I thought of cancel culture, my first thought went to YouTubers who had to make apology videos for saying something stupid. It wasn't anything to do with politics.
But today, it is under threat.
There is no true free speech in this country. It's utterly terrifying.
Under the guise of safety and social justice, governments across the West are clamping down on what we can say.
You're giving the state far too much power that it will inevitably abuse.
Will freedom of thought and speech become a thing of the past in the UK?
Ofcom will be an organ of the state to decide what's true and what's false.
Oh yes, Cancelled will be coming to you this coming Sunday. I would really like to know what date it is. Yeah, the 6th of August. 6th of August, 9 p.m. UK time. You can watch that by going on 2c.tv. That's the 2c TV Plus platform. That's the only way you can watch that, and obviously Groomed as well, and all the other stuff that we have. All right, we've also done a whole revamp. It's all sexy now. Actually, from tomorrow, hopefully, we're having a whole new revamp on the watch page on 2CTV Plus. We've done a whole Netflixy, basically, without being sued by Netflix. Spaceman says, I'll subscribe when you release the app. Oh, the app, the infamous app. Although Jenny is also saying it's fake. Like the app, the documentary is fake. Well, big announcement, ladies and gentlemen. The app is coming soon. The 2CTV Plus app is coming soon. That's all I can tell you. It's coming soon, guys. Shut up. Stop it. All right. Did I say what? Did I say August? Did I say August? I meant April. 6th of April, not August. It's been a long day. It's only Tuesday, though. Yeah, if I said August, I meant April. The answer 6th of April. Yes, thank you. All right. Where are we? Cool. Roy says, replacement is coming. What free speech? Well, firstly, we don't have free speech. We have limited speech. And secondly, replacement is here already, basically. 2CTV app is the April Fool's. Yeah, every day is April Fool's on this channel, basically. Paul says, I'm actually the same. When the app is released, I'll subscribe as it will be easier for me. Seriously, guys? Really? Do you realize you joining the website will help us with the funding of the app? Now, if everybody's waiting for the app, we're not going to be able to fund the website. Fine. I'll go bankrupt just for you. Victoria says, can you define soon, Maya? Well, it's how you want to self-identify. You have to respect people's definition of soon. I guess I was trying to go woke with this. Soon means Soon. Soon! Trust me. Don't trust me. Next. Common sense is Labour's rubbish. Just look at the state of Birmingham. Birmingham had to declare a state of emergency because of all the rubbish in the city. It's so embarrassing that after everything that happened in Brighton under the Greens, and there was also Labour involved, you would have thought that other local councils would look at that city and say, well, you know what? Probably best not to fall into the same trap. Let's clean up the city. No, because they have more money to use to do woke nonsense and diversity officers than actually clean up the mess. I'm planning on subscribing when I'm not a broke student. It's your fault for being a broke student. I'm kidding. I always knew the app was a lie. It's not a lie. I showed you guys the screenshots. There was a screen grab. It's real. It's happening. Seriously. Have some faith. The app will be the savior. Billy Bogus says, what's happened to the millions of Birmingham Muslim taxi drivers and the Turkish barbers as well? Let's not forget about those guys. Yeah, I don't understand, considering that Birmingham Council continues to take more tax money, council tax money. You would think that they have more money, they should have more money, but no, they don't. Angela says, Birmingham is a dump, health risk. I would never go there. This kind of reminds me of about 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, there was a Tory conference in Birmingham, and there was this young Tory student, and he wasn't even a student, as he wasn't a uni, he was a teenager, like he was probably like 17, and he went to Birmingham to go to the Tory conference. He posted on social media, took a picture of Birmingham, there was just rubbish everywhere, and he said, Birmingham is a dump, right? Now, firstly, it's a subjective opinion. If you're from Birmingham, you might get offended, right? People in London, we always get insulted by everybody from outside London. We're kind of used to it. London is terrible. You get killed every day. But that kid got cancelled, fully cancelled, for saying Birmingham is a dump. He got kicked out of the Tory conference. His membership was revoked. His family disowned him. He had to fly to Rwanda himself. It was, maybe the last bit didn't happen, but basically, yeah. TC says, can you not exist without the app, 2C? Well, that's weird for a start. I can live without the app, but apparently you guys can't, so that's not my fault. Stu says, call it a asteroid that will never come in. Asteroid. Oh. Anyway. Jack says, make ninja swords great again. I'm glad that we're actually doing a crackdown on ninjas. There's a lot of ninjas in the UK. You have to stop them. That's what our Prime Minister is doing. Barry says, Paul Joseph Watson has been promising the same with his app for over a year and hasn't done it yet either. The difference is I'm actually doing it. It's coming. It's basically ready. Why does Paul need an app? But yeah, no, I don't know what he's doing. But it's basically ready. The whole thing is ready. We're just waiting for the App Store, which is now going through slowly. Just wait for it. This is going to come back and bite me in the... Yeah. Lorraine says, thanks, Maya. More need to make a stand like Jenrick. Yes, I agree. Zena says, I am a Bromie. I was not offended. Facts are correct. This was once a great city until Labour bankrupted us and made it a dump. It's true. Let's not forget Birmingham was absolutely beautiful. By the way, I'm technically talking about 150 years ago, but it was beautiful. And until a few decades ago, outside the city centre, it was great. It's completely changed. Partly because of socialist policies, partly because of segregation and mass migration, all this nonsense. But mostly because of policies. They could have still made the area look nice, but of course they didn't. The problem with Birmingham is Birmingham always relied on central powers, even the local authorities, to run it. Whereas Manchester, so for those who don't know, about 200, 300 years ago, there was a massive battle between Manchester and Birmingham over when they were trying to build the canals. The canal in Birmingham, the canal in Manchester, and everything else. And in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, Manchester went with a different approach. Free enterprise. They got smaller businesses, medium-sized businesses, basically free market, to come and build things. And obviously, we had people like Robert Peel and many others who were from there, and they knew how to do decentralization. And they actually built the canal quicker than Birmingham. But Birmingham, when they had good governance, oh, they did great things. Absolutely. Birmingham became beautiful. The issue is, if you rely on politicians and bureaucrats to do things for you, one day the good ones are going to go and the bad ones are going to come. What are you going to do then? And that's unfortunately what happened to places like Birmingham. It's not the fault of the people. It's the fault of the leadership of these cities. And that was the issue. Manchester, for decades and decades, for a couple of centuries, it was always decentralized and it worked really well. It came up. Manchester also went down because over the last 50, 60 years, everything has been centralized, just like Birmingham, just like London. Things are being basically ordered by the bureaucrats and the local politicians. You can't trust any of these idiots. They don't know how to run businesses. Why do you expect them to run your city? Nina says that what's great about the documentaries is that you can watch anytime you want. Watch the grooming documentary. It was really... I love how you, the 2CTV subscribers, are so good at promoting the 2CTV Plus platform than myself. It feels like I'm paying these guys to say the nice things. But yes, Nina is right. You can watch it whenever you want, and soon with the app, you can watch it wherever you want. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You don't need the app. You can watch it on your browser, on your phone as well, if you're outside. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to 2C TV Plus by going on 2C.tv. Thank you for watching on my 2C, and we are the media.